Hello and welcome to Journeys and Journals. I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and I get to meet the people who are watching TV on a normal day like today. And this is the guy we're going to talk to. I want you to meet Mr. Smith. Welcome. Now, your first name is Ardis?
Ardis, not artist.
But you're quite an artist here with this machine next to you. What's the story, Ardis?
I have played it ever since I was about 14 or 15.
Starting with what size?
I started out with a 12, and I decided that I liked the sound, and so I got a 24, and then I got a 120, and I wore the 120 out. And then I got two more, and I ended up with this one.
What a gorgeous piece of... I understand you play all over Central Oregon.
Well, I love to play, and I go to nursing homes and retirement homes and play.
And you're how old?
94.
And 94, and you just drove 150 miles to be on Better Life TV today.
That's right.
This is really very neat to have you here. Ardis, people were talking about you, saying you really ought to interview this guy. But he had called ahead and volunteered. Now that's taken us 6 months to have this interview, but he brought pictures, a stack of pictures that tell his family history. Baby Ardis?
Yeah. Baby Ardis. My mother and my father.
And they're from where?
My mother was from Portland, and my father was from Centralia by way of Roseburg.
Okay, now is this the connection with Roseburg?
Yes, that was my grandmother.
And her name?
She was married to a man that lived in Roseburg, and he loved to pan gold, and so he taught my father how to pan gold, and that's how he worked his way through Walla Walla College, was by coming home every summer and panning gold.
Sure, when the rivers are real low is a good time to go out there in the gravel and...
That's right.
So do you know how well he did?
I really don't know.
But enough to put himself through college?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Boy. Because let's see, he's born to these folk?
No, that's my mother's mother. And that's another story. They were together as teenagers, and then they got split, as couples do, and he went to Havre, Montana, and was on a railroad all his life, and he found out that his high school
sweetheart,
lived in Portland, and so he got on the train and came down to Portland, and he had found out too that her son was a policeman, so he went to the police department, and my Uncle Frank had retired and had a little restaurant up on Sandy Boulevard. And so he went up there, and he sat down on the stool, and the man next to him asked him what he was, how he was and what he was doing. And he said, "Well, I'm looking for Frank Davison." He said, "Well, I'm Frank Davison."
On the next stool in the restaurant.
Yes, all in this restaurant. And so he said, "Well, she doesn't live in Portland anymore. She's moved up to Centralia." So he gets in the train and goes up there and goes to my mother's house, and and tells her his story. And so she goes next door and brings my grandmother over to meet this man. And they marry, and they were both over through their 80s.
Well,
in their 80s.
Now, you're how old, Frank? You are how old now?
Now, I'm 94 now.
And you married a young,
Yes.
at the young age of
Yes.
70?
Well, she wasn't 70 when I married her.
No, but you were in your...
No, I was 55. And
Father with 3 young boys, did I understand, when you had been widowed?
yes, and a girl.
And a girl.
Yes.
That must have been terribly tough, Ardis.
Well, it was. But I was just telling my daughter the other day that I think the hardest thing was they got a job in New York, and he had an old Chevy pickup, and they loaded everything they owned in that old pickup and took off for New York. And as they drove off, I cried because she's gone, but they have 5 wonderful children, and we've had a good relationship. And I told him the other day I'd do it again.
Oh, wonderful. Now, this is you?
That's Aunt Eva, and that's my father, yes.
Because we turn the other page, and there you are.
That's right.
You and who?
And Arlene, my sister.
Arlene and Ardis. How did you get named Ardis?
Well, I was supposed to be a girl.
Oh,
And when I came out a boy, my mother's best friend said, well, why don't you name him Ardis anyway? And so that's what I got.
with the name of Smith, I'll bet you're the only Ardis Smith in
I
the
think
whole world.
so. I think so.
Now, you brought these wonderful pictures. What's the story about you and these albums of pictures?
Well, I've got a lot of family pictures. My father graduated from a little school up in southern Washington that had just started up, and he graduated in 1915, and then he went
And that's from what school?
from Columbia Academy.
And then your mother?
My mother graduated in the first graduating class of Laurelwood Academy.
And that's what year?
That was in 1913.
Oh my goodness. Now these are roots.
Yes.
I mean, it's not just your roots, but
Yes.
where you have, that's much earlier history than I've ever heard of before.
Yes.
This includes who?
That's my father. That's the graduating class for 1915.
Do you know any of the names of the people?
I don't.
But that's your dad.
My dad, yes.
Oh boy, good looking guy. Now the
Thank you.
folks lived to be ripe old age too, is that right?
Well, my mother was just lacking a month of being 88, and my father got Parkinson's palsy when he was 44, and he had to stop working.
Working in what, in the train?
He was a cabinet maker, and that was my trade to start with. And I started out pushing the broom, cleaning up sawdust.
In the carpenter shop. At what age was that you were?
Well, I started out about 12,
Yeah.
but I didn't get paid anything until I was 14, and then they started paying me.
Not even a nickel or a dime, huh?
Hardly.
Then comes Grandma.
Yes. That's my mother, and she is there with her doggie, and
Where are they?
they are on the beach down at Florence.
You guys have loved this area. The middle of a state of Oregon has been
Well,
home for you guys.
It has been. We have been here for 65 years, and we came from Centralia, Washington, and moved down here.
Well, I know this show is now being seen in Vancouver and Woodland and in that area. I don't know if it goes clear to Centralia, but
I don't know.
we'd love to. It can
Yeah.
be seen online any place in the whole wide world. Does that shock you? For this kid from Southern Oregon, I am so in awe that it can even happen. Look, another picture. What do you have?
That is my mother and father and sister, and we're in front of my sister's home.
And that's you?
Yes, that's me.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and you notice my hair is curly there. It was,
Excuse me.
yes.
Where did all those curls go?
They went the way most curls go.
But you told me a funny story over lunch today about curls.
Yes,
You
My-
and your sister were going to have the portrait. It must have been a very big deal.
it was a big deal for my mother, but yeah, it didn't appear to be very big for me. My sister had long curls, and my mother had
Finger curls, I'll
yes,
bet.
finger curls. Yes.
Bouncing, bouncing.
And they had taken me to a barber shop and got my first haircut, professional. And so I thought she should have a haircut too. So I sat her down on the steps going upstairs and proceeded to cut the curls off of her, and my mother caught us when I was nearly finished.
Oh,
So they had to take her and have her cut a boy cut.
because this picture's sure cute of the two of you, but that wasn't intended.
No, it wasn't.
Those beautiful long curls. Now let's get to you as a grown man. Are you all grown up here in this logging picture?
Well, I bought that logging truck in '43, and that must have been about 44 or 45, 1945.
Folks, to look at this log, I don't know what its diameter is, but let's check it out.
Well, it came.
One log
One-
load.
Yes.
We've heard of that before.
It came from up at Randall on the river, and they had to roll it onto me. It was too big to handle, so they rolled it on. And it took me all day to get to Olympia because it was higher than normal, and they were afraid that I would take out somebody's telephone lines. So every line we came to, I had to stop and be checked to see that the lines were okay.
Wow. This came from what forest?
Randall, Washington.
And your mill was up in Washington State.
Yes, the dump was in Washington, in Olympia.
The dump.
Yeah, that's what they called where you dump the logs. And
It rolled off and into a pond.
yes, it rolled into the bay there. And that log was so big that there was no sawmill large enough to handle it, so it laid out in the mud flats for about 6 months or so, and one day I came and it was gone. And so I asked the dump man what happened to it, and he said a man came and with a boat, and he loaded the boat up with his equipment and went out to the log and sat there till the tide went out. Then he got up on top of it and he drilled holes with a chainsaw, and he put dynamite in it, and then he waited for the tide to come in, and he went back away from it a ways, and he set off the dynamite and blew it apart. And then it was small enough so that a mill could handle it. And
How tall do you think this was?
well, it was about 6 foot. You can see how tall I am there, and
You go just past the middle of that log, and how
Yeah.
tall are you?
I was 5'6" there.
5'6".
Hmm.
So looks to me like a 9, a 10,
It could have
9
been
foot.
a 9 foot.
And you're not even the big end.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the biggest log I think I ever saw.
Well, it was one of the biggest that came out of that area, yes.
Well, now, what in the world moved you from up there all the way down to Eugene, Oregon?
Well, I came down here because it was drier. Up there, it seemed like they had lots of rain, and I liked the sunshine, and so I came down to Roseburg and hauled logs in Roseburg, and then ended up in Eugene.
Yeah, well, that
Springfield.
we'd been in Renton, Washington, and we got kind of wet
Yes.
and decided we'd better move south to California. So 30
Okay.
years there, Bay Area, we come back here to just the right amount of rain. Now, did you, it was home for you when these children were being born? Was
Yes.
Roseburg?
No.
Eugene.
Yes, they all were born in Springfield. There was a little girl that was named Chris that died when she was 23 months old in my arms.
Oh, that's
We
a
took
tough.
her to the hospital, and they were more in wanting to get statistics than they were in taking care of her, I felt like. And they should have taken her directly in, and I think they do that now. But
You mean registering and all that?
Yeah.
They took time and time and
and she went in, she died in my arms. And so consequently, my wife was very despondent about it, and we went to the county and were taking 2 lessons on taking in children, county children. And after the second time, I said, I can't make myself take somebody in and love them and then have to let them go. And so we stopped going there. And a lady, a friend of ours, told us about an attorney in Portland that did adoptions. And so we called him, and he said, well, he didn't have any adoptions for 6 months. And so we just put it out of our mind, and on April 14, we got a call saying that he had a little baby girl.
oh,
Would we like? And we said yes. And so we waited waited and waited until the fourth day, and finally we called up at 5 o'clock, and he said, well, I was just going to call you that there was a mistake in the hospital and it's a boy instead of a girl.
Oh, no.
And do you want a boy? And we said, yes, we would. And so we went up the next day, and I got to carry him down to the car and put him in his mother's arms.
Now, this is your first child?
No, this is my last child. Yeah.
This is great story. Oh, we've just got pictures galore, like this one. That's more your family,
That's
right?
my mother and her three best friends.
Oh, my goodness. And their names?
They were all Grace.
Grace, and more Grace.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, there was a Grace Ellis and a Grace Davison, my mother, and a Grace Bancock, or a Babbitt. No.
Babcock. All these he's documented.
Babcock.
Pictures, and on the back are documented names, times, and places. And sitting just off camera over there is this lovely lady.
Yes. We've been married for 37 years, and my first wife, we were married for 25 years, and she died of cancer, and I married her second cousin. We kept it right in the family.
All in the family, folks. Look at that.
That's all my children were in them, and their children. Some of those were my grandchildren.
And they're all in the wedding.
And they were all in the wedding,
Well,
yes.
You know, to have you come with your stories has just been marvelous, and to meet your wife. It's thank you for driving all this way down to be interviewed. You've got stories about South, going south to California, and I want you to tell us that next time.
All right. I would love to tell it.
This guy has more stories. Oh, I've just been so pleased. I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and I just want to thank you so very much for tuning in to Journeys and Journals. If you've missed any of the shows or if you'd like to see one again, they're all online. The address is right here on your screen of how you can go to betterlifetv.tv and then scroll down to Journeys and Journals. Thank you so very much for being my guest.